About the process that you follow in UTI, I think when you took over this equity part in UTI, you made some changes, etc., which I am aware. But the thing is, very briefly, if you can tell the viewers, the process that you follow in stock selection or portfolio building, whatever you want to call it. So that very briefly, if you can tell what are the major parameters that you look for, how you select, etc.
Good question. So, we have the benefit of having a large research team, 8 analysts supported by 3 junior analysts, and the team put together now covers almost about 320 companies officially, and including about 15 to 20 companies which are on sort of unofficial coverage, which are likely to be brought into coverage. So we have a wide coverage. Now,
can you come again?
I think
sorry, how many? I was not able to hear. How many analysts?
So 8 analysts with the head of research, and then 3 junior analysts who support them in carrying out putting together the models, maintaining the data, and gradually they can also graduate into full-time analysts. So it's about almost 11 members involved in full-time research, and they cover, as I said, about 320 companies which are on the official coverage list. And then about 15 to 20 companies we are ready, as and when they decide or the fund managers decide, it can be brought into coverage. So that is the universe that we cover. Now, I would say the UTI investment process fundamentally rests on 2 pillars. And these 2 pillars are what we believe eventually creates wealth in any company. The first pillar is, does the company generate operating cash flow? Now, normally when you see the stock market or you see any conversation, everybody focuses on how much profit does the company make. But I think what we have learned as investors over a long time is that profit is a function of certain accounting interpretations and certain accounting principles. But profit is not equal to cash that the company has actually earned during the year. So when we say operating cash flow, we are actually saying that, of course, profits are important, but we as investors need to be aware what is the actual operating cash flow that the company is generating. Now you will say, why is operating cash flow important? Operating cash flow is important because if the company does not generate cash and only has accounting profits, then even to run your business on a day-to-day basis, you will have to borrow from banks or from your shareholders. Point number 2, unless you have operating cash flow, you will not be able to reinvest in your business and be able to grow the business over time, right? So this is why we believe that operating cash flow is the fundamental pillar that in any company which has created value over time, you will see that it has a good track record of converting profits into cash. Now, we go to the second pillar. Second pillar is, how does a company grow? A company grows by reinvesting in its business. Now, it can borrow money from banks or it can borrow money from shareholders by raising capital. Or if you generate cash flow, you don't have to take the money from anybody. You reinvest that cash flow in your business, right? When you reinvest that money in your business, there is one golden rule. The return on the capital that you earn has to be higher than the cost of capital. If the return on capital is lower than the cost of capital, you are destroying money. You are not creating any value. So these are the 2 fundamental and very simple pillars that underpin the investment process at UTI. Does the company create cash flow? Is the company investing the cash flow at a return on capital which is higher than cost of capital, right? So these are the 2 parameters that the analysts really focus on. What we have also done, Chakulingam, is we have an internal framework. We look at the previous 5-year records of all companies, based on which we would categorize them. So company can get rated as C1, which means previous 5 years, every year it had a positive cash flow. C2, it's less regular. C3, very irregular. Similarly, companies get rated based on return on capital. R1 last 5-year return on capital is higher than 18%. R2 lower, R3 very low. Right? What this gives us then is a very clear framework as to what kind of company it is, what kind of metrics does it have, and then as an analyst, the focus is very simple. If the company is low in terms of return on capital, do we have an argument as to how it can improve the return on capital over the next 3 years, 5-year period? If it can improve, then it provides us an argument to invest in the company. For many other companies, their cash flow profile, their return on capital is already very, very strong. In that case, we just have to remain invested in them uh, with some degree of confidence and regular review, because as long as they keep generating that high return on capital, we know that it will convert into wealth for us. So these are the two pillars which sit at the heart of the research process at UTI. All companies get these very objective ratings. The analyst perception is very simple. Can this company improve or can this company sustain? In both cases, we get good investment ideas. If you think the company will deteriorate or the company cannot improve, then it is not a good investment idea. So the advantage of having a process actually is not so much that it will help you identify 10 baggers and 100 baggers. It will help you avoid accidents.
True.
The minute you avoid accidents, automatically the probability that the investments you make will end up becoming successful have gone up. And that is why we think this investment process is key to the success that we have had in recent years.
Very good, Vetri. Thanks for putting that in a nice framework. Now, as an addition to that, say like now there is a lot of talks about active versus passive funds, and I think you do manage passive funds also. If I'm right, around 20,000 crore plus something passive funds also you are managing for NPS and other things, or PF, I don't know. So now coming to that point, say like now you are putting so much hard work with so many analysts, so many fund managers, and picking the right stocks, etc. Now, where do you see active versus passive investing in India? Say like in other countries like US, passive funds have become much larger than active funds, if I'm right. So where do you see in India investors should go with, because mostly India is driven by active funds right now, and people are willing to invest in active funds because of the alpha that it gives. But what is your take on that active versus passive thing, that discussion?
Correct. So my attitude towards this is that whenever anybody says, how should I stay fit? Correct. It's very simple. You need to be careful about what you eat. You also need to be careful about the exercise that you do. Both are important. If you say, no, it's only about what you eat, incorrect. If you say, no, it is only about how you exercise, that is also incorrect. Both are required. I think similarly, this is a very theoretical debate about active versus passive. In my opinion, there is room for both to coexist in the market. There is scope for both products to come into an investor's portfolio. It is a question of what is right for them and what is the opportunity set that they have. So our approach at UTI has been that, look, we are a manufacturer. We have put a solid team behind active management. We have a process, we have talented people, we have experienced people. They will continue the pursuit of alpha, which we believe our process will give us an advantage such that we will be able to deliver the alpha. Some people might say, I don't want the alpha. I am just happy if I can get some return from the market at the least possible price, where I know that my fluctuation will always be in line with the market. So for those people, there is a passive product. My own view is that over time, just like you have seen in the US, you will see some increasing demand for passive come in. It is likely to come initially from the institutional investor, where they are also concerned about the fact that they don't want to have adverse selection of products. B, they want to be able to say that whatever our equity allocation is, we got the benchmark return. And passive only promises you that. It cannot do better, it cannot do worse. But for some people, that is a good option. They don't want the extra. They just don't want to have worse. So I think for many institutional investors, and that is where we are seeing this PF money start to come in quite aggressively into equities, I think a lot of that will go to passive. And even for some individual investors who say, I don't want to waste any time, or I don't want to spend my energy trying to figure out which fund, how to allocate and all of that, you will find that some of them will choose passive. Will passive become as large a portion of our industry as it is in the US? Maybe not in the next 2 to 3 years, but I certainly think there is room for passive in all investors' portfolio.
Okay.